Shubor nakaslem jong unongsan Hima.
MLA kanongkrem constituency uba Ardent milo basoimon hinya kasngi ulo Wanrah yakamat banitai hapok yendor bar thau ain lingba ka short duration discussion yakishpotli kimat Jingdawa joko voice of the people party. Haba juba begini kishpotli kimat Jingdawa joko VPP nakalia umitri rangba kejala ukonrat ke sangma ulong ba unjubab ya baro kishpotli kimat bat kinturu ya kidakhat kibawan ra ya kani kamat ban sngap ya kejubab keba unsa jubab umitri rangba ulai thu ba ke MPSC kalong lai loj naka tuklar jongki politician nomor ya ucharman bat kidakhat lathung da ulat kejala ulong ru ba ke MPSC kadon ya kasel ban sngap ya kijing kiba kisamlawat kam kimat shushu umitri rangba ulakren ru abaya dei bat kejingwan ra ya ketien khasi bat garo kum ko official language ka jipendo ya ka personal interview na ka benta ki group di bat ka sarkar ka persang banweng no ya ka personal interview na ka benta ki weru ki kam umitri rangba ulai ka jubab abaya dei bat ka kam ti doyong kimat ki baya dei bat ki nogrep khapot bat ki wei kimat.
I rise to reply to the short duration discussion tabled by Honorable Member from Nongkrem, supported by Honorable Member from Maulai and Honorable Member from Morankaneng, on the 10-point charter of the Voice of the People Party. So the issues raised in the charter merit a careful examination of both the facts and the actions taken by the government. I would therefore like to place before this august House the factual position on each matter and the steps undertaken by the government. And the records will show that every action has been taken within the framework of the Constitution, the laws of the land, and the directions of the competent authorities, while keeping the welfare of the people of Meghalaya at the forefront. Sir, I will go through the points, may not be in the sequence that they have mentioned earlier, but I will go as per the points that have been put in front of me, but I will cover all the 10 points. I do request, sir, if I be allowed to reply without any interference. And obviously, I would request if the members can be present throughout my reply. So the first issue which I would like to address is the depoliticization of the recruitment under the MPSC and the DSC. Sir, it must be placed on record that the independence of the MPSC from political interference is not a matter left to executive discretion. It is a constitutional guarantee. The chairman and members of the commission are appointed by the governor under Article 316 of the Constitution of India. Under Rule 4 and 5 of the MPSC Regulations, 1972, the Commission consists of a chairman and 4 members holding office for a term of 6 years or until attaining the age of 62 years, whichever is earlier. Crucially, the chairman or any member can be removed from office only in the manner provided under Clause 1 and 3 of the Article 317 of the Constitution, and the conditions of service of a member cannot be varied to their disadvantage after appointment. Further, the MPSC falls within the jurisdiction of the Meghalaya Lokayukta, constituted under the Meghalaya Lokayukta Act 2014. Any allegations of bribery or favoritism is subject to independent statutory scrutiny, entirely outside the control of the government of the day. Now let me place on record the reforms that this government has undertaken. In November 2024, we constituted a dedicated MPSC Reforms Committee chaired by Professor David Siemle, himself a former chairman of the Union Public Service Commission. It consulted the public and we implemented its report. Today, any candidate or citizen can be rest assured that the syllabus, the candidate to vacancy ratio, and the selection process are pre-declared in the advertisement itself. Discretion is removed before the process begins. Number 2, applications are scrutinized through automatic recruitment processing software. Number 3, OMR-based examinations are tamper-resistant and auditable, with answer keys published after every exam, with 7 full days to challenge them. D, the marks of every qualified candidate across the screening test, interview, and the totals are published on the MPSC website, with individual marks viewable at every stage through the portal megrecruitment.nic.in/RPA marks. /RPA marks. E, a public facilitation center has been established to handle candidate inquiries and provide necessary information. Additionally, the grievances cell of the MPSC is available for receiving representations or grievances from candidates through an online portal, rpa.meghalaya.gov.in/MPSE grievance. Sir, I shall now address the concerns relating to the district selection committees. These committees handle recruitment to district level posts under the offices and establishments of districts and subdivisions that do not fall within the purview of the MPSC or the departmental selection committees. They are created to conduct recruitment to local posts close to the communities served, while maintaining fairness, transparency, and administrative efficiency. The present composition of the DSC, a chairperson, a non-official vice chairman, 2 non-official members, and a member secretary, is not an ad hoc arrangement. It has remained unchanged since 1982 and has been consciously reviewed and retained by successive governments over more than 4 decades. This continuity reflects a deliberate administrative judgment that balances official oversight with community participation. A fundamental objective of the DSC framework is to build local oversight into recruitment. The inclusion of non-official members brings the perspective of communities served by the district administration and keeps decision-making inclusive. At present, the chairman and member secretary are already senior officers of the district administration. If the vice chairman and other members were also made official appointments, the committee would become entirely bureaucratic, with no independent community-facing presence. Such a structure may appear streamlined, but it could weaken public confidence in the fairness of district recruitment. Alongside this representative composition, the government has already put several safeguards in place to protect the integrity of the process. These include, number 1, videography at examination venues and an enhanced number of invigilators to deter and detect unfair means during written examinations. Number 2, merit lists based solely on aggregate marks in the written exams and interviews wherever applicable. Written examination marks kept in sealed covers opened only at final evaluation after the interviews. And publication of written examinations results on the notice board in order of serial or roll number immediately after declaration. These measures have strengthened the credibility of DSC across districts. So while the core principles have remained sound, experience shows that different districts have at times followed varying practices in vacancy scrutiny, examination schemes, question paper setting, evaluation, answer key finalization, interviews and declaration of results. And because of these practices evolved through multiple office memoranda, executive instructions and circulars, there is at present no single consolidated procedural framework. And this has caused avoidable inconsistencies, delay, and litigation risks. Sir, the government has therefore decided, I repeat, sir, the government has therefore decided to introduce a comprehensive standard operating procedure that harmonizes all existing instructions into a single, sequential, and legal coherent framework applicable across all districts. The SOP establishes a uniform, transparent, and legal robust recruitment framework aimed at merit-based selection, equal opportunity, adherence to government rules, administrative efficiency, accountability, and a verifiable audit trail. 2. It defines the composition, powers, and responsibilities of the DSC and segregates functions to prevent conflict of interest. Major decisions on examination schemes, answer keys, results, and selection lists must be taken collectively with proper documentation and approval. C. All persons associated with recruitment must give confidentiality undertakings and conflict of interest declarations. Any breach may invite disciplinary or legal action. D. Recruitment shall begin only after a complete approved intimation of vacancies from the concerned departments after approval of the reservation roster. The prescribed sequence, vacancy notification, advertisement, examinations, qualifying test, written examinations, and interview, where applicable, and declaration of results must be strictly followed. And the process shall be ordinarily completed within 6 months from advertisement to final selection. Knowledge of local language is a mandatory eligibility criteria, tested through a separate local language proficiency paper on a qualifying basis. A candidate must secure at least 30 out of 100 marks. Failure results in disqualification without evaluation of other papers. And so this is being done also in line with the fact that we have brought the act or the bill to include Khasi and Garo as official language. And it is with that spirit we are continuing to implement this aspect and this mandatory eligibility criteria. So I repeat, for all the other communities who may be concerned, that this is an eligibility criteria, which means you have to score only 30 out of 100. So whether you score 31 or 90 or 99, it does not affect your marks. You simply have to qualify in this particular language proficiency exam, and this has been made mandatory in the DSC. F, the advertisement must clearly disclose vacancies, eligibility, examination scheme, syllabus, qualifying marks, local language requirement, application dates, indicative timelines, and grievance mechanisms. Applications should ordinarily be received through a secure online system with appropriate data safeguards. The SOP guards against malpractice through multiple question paper sets or randomized computer-based papers, independent modernization, identity verification, and attendance recording. Evaluation shall be sequential, beginning with the local language proficiency paper. H. Provisional answer keys are to be published within 7 days of the examination, followed by an online objection window. Objections are examined by independent subject experts, and a final answer key is approved by the DSC for evaluation. While applicable, interview marks shall not exceed 12 points. Where applicable, interview marks shall not exceed 12.5% of the total marks for final merit. It also reiterates the discontinuation, and I repeat, sir, it also reiterates the discontinuation of interviews for Group D posts. Results should ordinarily be declared within 30 days of completing each stage, and merit lists prepared in accordance with the prescribed rules and reservation roster. Sir, very soon the government has also decided that we will move for removal of the interview process in other grades also. So very soon in the cabinet, the grade C, the non-technical post, and others, wherever it is permitted and wherever the UPSC is following the procedures, we will be also following those procedures and will be removing the interview aspect in different groups also in the days to come. So the SOP requires publication of cutoff marks, merit lists, and final selection list. A dedicated grievance cell shall dispose of grievances ordinarily within 15 days, and recruitment records are to be preserved securely for at least 5 years or until related litigation concludes, whichever is later. Sir, the government's objective is not merely to conduct recruitment, but to ensure that recruitment is transparent, merit-based, locally responsive, and publicly credible. The existing DSC composition has been retained over decades because it balances administrative oversight with community participation. At the same time, the government recognizes the need for continuous improvement and is introducing this comprehensive SOP to further strengthen fairness, consistency, and accountability in the district level recruitment across the state. Sir, in the course of the different points that were mentioned, Honorable Member from Nongkrem had mentioned about a particular case in one of the districts. I am to inform the House that the matter is in High Court as of now, and therefore it will not be appropriate for me to respond. We will have to wait for the court's decision, and hence that particular matter is sub judice, and hence I will refrain from going into details of that. But I would like to inform the House that there is a hearing or this case that is going on in the High Court. So second point was stop job extensions to retired employees. So this premise that extending service of retired employees blocks opportunities for the youth is not true. So let me clarify that re-employment of retired officers is, number one, very rare, very, very rare, sir. And even if it is done for a very short period and in a handful of cases. And it does not block the youth unemployment because it is the re-employment, sir, of the retired officer concerned. So the appointments which the honorable members point to are to statutory bodies like the State Information Commission, the Farmers Commission, the State Food Commission, the Public Service Delivery Commission, and the Real Estate Regulatory Authority. These are not service extensions, but appointments that the law prescribes to be of significant domain expertise and duration of experience. Section 22 of the Real Estate Regulation and Development Act 2016 mandates that the chairperson and members shall be appointed from amongst persons having adequate knowledge of and professional experience of at least 15 to 20 years in urban development, housing, real estate development, infrastructure, economics, technical expertise from relevant fields like planning, law, commerce, accountancy, industry, management, social service, public affairs, or administration. Section 15 of the Right to Information Act 2005 prescribes that the State Chief Information Commissioner respectively shall be appointed from amongst persons of eminence in public life, with wide knowledge and experience in law, science and technology, social service, management, journalism, mass media, or administration and governance. Similarly, Section 16 of the National Food Security Act 2013 prescribes that the chairperson and members of the State Food Commission shall be appointed from amongst persons who are or have been member of the All India Service or any other civil service of the Union or state, or holding a civil post under the Union or state, having knowledge and experience in matters related to food security, policy making, and administration in the field of agriculture, civil supplies, nutrition, health, or any allied field. Sir, I would also like to place on record the details of employment opportunities provided to the youth over the last 3 years. Sir, over 9,000 vacancies have been advertised in the last 3 years. 1,011 appointments were made through MPSC alone. 2,413 police vacancies have been filled through the Central Recruitment Board. 769 doctors have been appointed through the Meghalaya Medical Services Recruitment Board. 1,686 appointments were made through the DSC. So therefore, this recruitment set took place in the last 3 years alone. Sir, I also would like to mention here that there were certain mentions or certain points that were made regarding the appointments that were made on ad hoc basis, and the fact that they've been there for 17 years and not been regularized. So for the knowledge and information of the House, the members, and the public at large, sir, ad hoc appointments, as per definition, are appointments that were made on a sanctioned post, receiving the scale that is meant for that sanctioned post. But the appointment which was made on an ad hoc basis, not following the necessary procedures of selection, which means there was no advertisement, there was no process that was followed, and the concerned officer at that point in time, against the sanctioned post, appointed a person without following procedure. In legal terms, sir, that would be an illegal appointment. These ad hoc appointments, sir, continued for years. In 2007, when the Supreme Court came out with a verdict against a case where the ad hoc employees were demanding to be regularized, the Supreme Court gave us two options. Option number one was to remove all these ad hoc employees and go for fresh recruitment. Or number two, to go ahead and recruit and regularize through a procedure, regularize these ad hoc employees who have been working for many, many years. and 2007 December was put as a cutoff date. So the cabinet had a decision, or rather had a choice of removing these ad hoc employees. But realizing that these people have been working while the process was not followed. These people have been working in that post for decades, some of them appointed in 1995, 98. And hence the government and the cabinet at that point in time took a decision that we will regularize these employees. The court is giving us a choice. We will take this choice and regularize. And we did, sir. And now through the different procedures, because the departments also don't have all the records. In the first batch, 2,000 names came to us. Second batch, another 1,000 plus names came to us. Third batch, again another 1,000 names came to us. And the fourth batch, another 45 names came to us. So through the last 3 years, multiple departments have sent, sir, we missed out these 5 people. Sir, we missed out these 20 people. So the ad hoc employees pre-December 2007, based on this Supreme Court order, were regularized. Now, why can't we do it for the people up beyond December 2007? So because the court will not permit that. The court gave us an option. Today, if we go ahead and regularize an employee who was not recruited following the procedure, post 2007 December, and if somebody goes to court, then court will question the government as to how we regularized this process when in the first place the recruitment procedure was not followed. So hence it is not a simple matter where somebody says, why aren't we recruiting employee, why aren't we regularizing an ad hoc employee? So obviously we also feel for our people. We also realize that we need to help and support wherever possible. But we need to work under certain regulations. We need to work under certain procedures. And that is the reason why employees who are appointed post-2007 on an ad hoc basis, sir, please, again I repeat, that this ad hoc means sanctioned post, but while appointment was done, recruitment process was not followed. So technically it's an illegal appointment. But we got the option from Supreme Court to regularize pre-December 2007, and we took it. Sir, also there's a lot of issue about master roles and casual employees. Sir, you will be happy to know, and the House will be happy to know, and the employees will be happy to know, sir, that apart from the maternal mortality rate that we addressed, and I was mentioning in my question hour, so the salaries to the master roles was one of the top priorities when we took over in 2018. And I'll tell you why, sir. This is the reason, sir, this happened was because of the regular meetings of Disha. As a member of parliament, I used to go for Disha meetings. And whenever I used to go for the Disha meetings, the maternal mortality issue would come out. The money for the old age pension would come out. And the salary of the master role would come out, inevitably, because I used to have a public hearing after every Disha meeting. And in 2016-17, when I was having these Disha meetings, I could see that everywhere, every Disha meeting, every district, this was, a major issue. So we decided in 2018, of course it took us about a year to implement, that we will ensure that money is released in advance to the different departments for master roles. Now, sir, please, you have to remember, these are heads of accounts which we have to release to every department. So master role is not like one head, sir. Under PWD is a separate one. Under PHE, again separate. Under agriculture, again separate. Under water resources, again different. Under all departments, so about 8-9 departments are there, major ones, where the master roles are there. And hence, we have to get the demand from them, and then we release the money to each one. Now, this process, sir, has been quite smooth in, say, PWD and PHE and the larger ones, like even in health, it's smooth. But sir, and in the last 7 years, I'm sure you can ask any of the master roles, things are far more regular than they were before. Not that I'm trying to compare, but I'm just giving a basic idea. The payments are far more regular, and now that since the things are regular, sir, the expectation also is that there cannot be a delay for more than even a month or 2 months. Whereas there were times when there was delay for 9 months, sometimes a whole year. But that is not the point, sir. So we are ensuring that the master role amounts are released. there could be glitches once in a while, sir. Sometimes a new chief engineer comes in or a new finance person comes in. Sometimes the files take time. They miss out that particular quarter's amount. These kind of small issues do come up, sir, and we are happy to address them, and we're happy to ensure that that we take steps immediately to rectify the problems. And whenever these informations come to me, I'm the first one to call the concerned department and finance department to release that amount. So if there are any issues in the muster roll cases, sir, we are very happy to resolve it. We have always believed in the principle that every single person working in the government must get their salaries on time, whether you are a permanent employee or whether you're a muster roll, you are serving the people, and therefore we go with that principle. There could be shortcomings, sir. I don't disagree to that. There could be, and we rectify it. And if there are any cases where more needs to be done, so we'll be happy to personally look into this matter. Again, as I said, sir, we have a very strong system called the CM Connect 1971 number. Anybody can call that number and ensure that these things are taken care of. So the employment creation has not been confined only to government and public sector recruitment. Alongside direct public employment, the government has also runs several livelihood and entrepreneurship programs, which have created income-generating opportunities for the youth and the citizens of Meghalaya, sir. So since 2019, the state government has created, sir, and I'll repeat this, sir, since 2019, the state government has created over 3.6 lakh livelihood opportunities across sectors, demonstrating that government's employment strategy extends beyond sanction posts to enterprise creation and self-employment based livelihood. So in the last 3 years, about 50,000 wage and self-employment opportunities have been created for our youth, sir. So here I would also like to share, because some of the members had mentioned that that this government is for outsiders. And it's a statement or a feeling that individuals may have, and the honorable member may have, sir. But these 3.6 lakhs jobs that we created, so these are not outsiders, these are youth of our state. They are benefiting today from the economic growth that we're having. The farmers whom we are helping today, every day, these farmers are not outsiders. There are many schemes that are being given to them. These are farmers from our state who are benefiting. Whether it's a CM Assure program, whether it's a CM Farm Plus program, or whether it's the Focus and the Focus Plus programs. It is the farmers, our own farmers, and not outsiders who are benefiting. When the MGMP program takes place, where there are 8,000 of our youth and talented musicians who are today being supported, close to 50 crores has been distributed to these artists in the last 4 years. 50 crores, sir. Which means on an average about 12 crores every year goes to 8,000 artists. They perform in some place and the government pays for it. These MGMP artists are not from outside, sir. They are very much from our state. The 5 lakh self-help groups who are being supported with thousands of crores from NRLM, Government of India Fund, and our own state fund, and from different EAPs. So these are not outsiders. These are women, self-help groups, hard-working women from our state who are being supported. The homestays, more than 1,000 homestays that we have created in the last 4-5 years, and another 3,000 we're going to add. So these are again not people from outside. They are people from our own state who are benefiting. The hundreds of prime tourism vehicles and the prime agriculture vehicles who are getting the benefit. Again, sir, these are not outsiders, sir. These are all people from our state. And hence, when it comes to job creation and employment, this government has put that as one of the top priorities. I keep repeating this, sir, because for any government, and I can share this with you with full confidence, for any government, the number one challenge today, especially in India, is employment. It's not just Meghalaya, it's the entire country. Everybody's rushing for investments so that industries can come up, local industries can be promoted. Why? It's not because they want the investment to come in. It is because what the investment coming in then leads to and creates. And that's why, sir, economic growth and economic policy cannot be just simply seen from one lens. When you see an economic policy and a strategy, you have to see the entire spectrum. It's like looking at the rainbow and just saying that, we just look at the violet or the red or the blue or the green. You can't see it just in one color. You must see the entire impact of what an economic policy and what investment does. And that's why economics and policy making and governance are very complicated subjects. And yes, there are some areas sometimes we find that we're not maybe doing the things in the best efficient manner. We pull back, sir. Our government has never hesitated from taking a step back if we find that we are maybe not going in the right way. And then we do course correction and we move forward. And that's how things happen, sir. So therefore, let me assure the honorable member and the House and the citizens, and especially the youth, sir, that all of these programs, the 3.6 lakh jobs created in the last 5 years, this is for the youth of our state, sir. So next is regarding protecting land and stop backdoor sales, sir. So the statement that public land is being sold to corporates is incorrect, sir. Every acre of land acquired by the government of Meghalaya for public projects has been acquired in full conformity with the Meghalaya Transfer of Land Regulation Act 1971. So the government's process of procuring land for development projects is transparent, sir, and is on record. There's nothing to hide, sir. An expression of interest is called for all willing landowners who quote their own price, sir. And after receiving no objection from all authorities, including the headman, we move forward. So the Deputy Commissioner then holds a public hearing and an inquiry to confirm that the land is free of encumbrance, certifies that the price is reasonable, and only then is the proposal considered. The final decision on purchasing any land is made collectively by the Cabinet. This again, sir, is a very important practice we started. Any procurement of land cannot be done in isolation by any department. The decision is taken at the Cabinet, where entire Cabinet and government machinery is involved, sir. So this is exactly how the land for Shillong Airport expansion and the new Shillong Township were acquired, sir. So the government is following all due processes and is procuring land only for projects that unlock vast opportunities for the youth of the state. So here I would like to state that while we are looking at protecting our land, which of course, sir, this is something which is sentimental and, at the heart of what our tradition and our culture is. So government has always maintained a balance. There has never been a situation where we have bulldozed in any way. There has never been a situation where we go from the back door and get the sale of any land done. Everything is done in a procedure and a manner that is known to all. And as mentioned by the honorable member and the mover of this short duration, he mentioned that the community should be taken into consideration. And sir, I agree totally with that particular aspect. But I would also like to stress that the honorable member and his political party should practice what they preach. So today, you're aware, sir, that there is an act of the Khasi Hills Autonomous District Council Regulation and Administration of Land Amendment Bill 2026. And there is a clause there in section 16, which says that in section 16 of the Principal Act, the word, quote, after prior consultation with respective Dorbar Shnongs, Dorbar Rai, and Dorbar Hima, unquote, appearing after the words Executive Committee shall be deleted. So this particular amendment is quite unfortunate. And I must say it goes completely against the principle that was just mentioned in this discussion that we are having today. And I quote again, community should be taken into consideration, sir. Whereas in the Khasi Hills District Council, this particular act today is being amended to remove the Rangbashnongs, remove the ride as well as the Hima from this entire procedure of participation, sir. So where is the fairness? Where is the fairness? And sir, when we talk about ensuring that there must be a system of transparency, there must be a procedure in which all the different aspects are involved. Sir, our forefathers had that sight, had that vision. They knew that this must be done. And that is why today, sir, we have traditional institutions and setups. We have Rangbashnongs, we have the right, and we have the Hima, precisely to ensure that multiple checks and balances are there in our traditional system. And this system has been followed for decades and centuries, sir, I must say. And therefore, I urge, sir, that maybe this particular demand that is there, I would like to put this demand back to VPP. And I would like to also put my charter of demand on VPP to the KHADC and tell them that please practice what you preach. Please involve the traditional institutes. Please ensure that community is not left behind. I think that is very, very important. I totally agree with what the Honorable Member has mentioned, sir. So the next point is the securing of secure Meghalaya by stopping illegal influx. So for over 50 years, the border issue was left at status quo. In March 2022, this government signed an MOU with the government of Assam and resolved 6 of the 12 areas of differences. Tarabari in West Khasi Hills, Gizang West Khasi Hills, Hahim in West Khasi Hills, Boklapara, Khanapara, and Ratachera. Sir, these are not easy decisions. These are not simple decisions. So they are very, very complicated and vexed decisions. But the government has ensured that we strengthen the border security by ensuring that our land is protected at the border area. So with utmost, respect to all the past governments, we have seen how complicated this was, and hence for many, many decades, we could not move forward in this issue. But realizing the challenge and always maintaining that principle in our hearts. So we have a very strong principle we always believe. And that principle is that there is a purpose of why we are here today. There is a reason why God has given us this opportunity. And we will ensure that we do everything in our capacity to resolve problems that could not be resolved in the past. To do things that decades later, 50 years later, people will look back and say that it was this government that did these works. And this is that principle that drives us even today to take some of the toughest decisions that we have taken. I'm sure, sir, I don't want to list all the decisions, but they have been very tough for us. But we did it with that simple principle that we are here to make a difference. Sir, along the Indo-Bangladesh and interstate border, 18 anti-infiltration checkposts and check gates. Sorry, I just have some water. A railway facilitation center and a land custom station have been established, sir. So district special squads have also been stationed at the headquarters of all 12 districts to conduct extensive anti-infiltration drives. So border management is a security function undertaken in close coordination between the state and the BSF. The BSF being stationed near the international border serves as the first line of defense, while the state police deployed at nearby police stations, outposts and checkposts provide the second line of defense. Surveillance is maintained through regular joint patrolling and Naka checking along the international borders. Electronic surveillance equipments, including high-density lights, has also been installed at strategic locations to deter illegal intrusion. To strengthen the detection of illegal infiltration and regularly monitor anti-infiltration measures, the government has constituted 12 district task forces for the detection of Bangladeshi nationals. These task forces undertake regular checking and special drives. Surprise checks are also conducted once every month by joint teams comprising a magistrate, personnel of district police force, and staff of the infiltration branch. A state-level committee headed by the Principal Secretary or Secretary Home Political has been constituted to identify foreigners residing illegally in the state. The committee is mandated to identify foreigners who have overstayed since 1st of January 2011 and submit monthly reports to the Ministry of Home Affairs. In addition, a lead intelligence agency mechanism with the Border Security Forces as the nodal authority conducts regular coordination meetings with the Meghalaya Police, Central Paramilitary Forces, and Central Intelligence Agencies. Nokmas, headmen, and village defense parties in border villages have been actively engaged in strengthening border security. Regular awareness programs on cross-border crime and national security are conducted at the police station and outpost levels. Senior officers of the border district also visit border villages regularly to understand the difficulties faced by residents, and on several occasions have stayed overnight in these villages to build confidence among the local communities. So I also would like to add that very recently we have revisited the village defense party scheme that is there, and we have enhanced the scheme and figured out mechanisms in which we can engage even more constructively with the village defense parties to ensure that different equipments wherever necessary, different technologies, and obviously financial support be given, especially in very, very sensitive zones, sir. So this process also has started. About a year back, we revisited this whole thing, and I'm happy to inform the House that we have made considerable steps forward. But of course, it's a very large exercise, so we need to continue doing that. But the process is on today to engage with our villagers, because they are the best source of intel information to us that can come at, immediately on a real-time basis. So along the interstate border, regular alerts have been issued to districts sharing boundaries with Assam, directing them to put in place appropriate preventive measures against illegal entry, particularly in view of the recent eviction drive in Assam. Effective checking is being carried out along national highways and internal roads with the support of village headmen and village defense parties. Apart from infiltration from Bangladesh, the state also faces the entry of persons of doubtful citizenship from Assam, Tripura, and West Bengal, who claim to be residents of those states. Such people are sent back directly from the place of detection. So, to safeguard the demographic structure and the interest of the indigenous inhabitants of the state, the government enacted the Meghalaya Residents Safety and Security Act 2016. District task forces have been constituted in all the 12 districts under the Act, and an online application was launched in September 2022 in collaboration with NIC. To date, 966 localities, 561 sub-localities, 1,653 landlords, and 5,042 tenants have been registered. This represents an increase from the figure placed before the House in February 2026, with only 817 localities, 427 sub-localities, 1,110 landlords, and 3,297 tenants had been registered. So the government has also implemented the Meghalaya Identification, Registration, Safety and Security of Migrant Workers Act, which requires migrant laborers intending to work in the state to register with the Labour Department. So in this matter also, I would like to further mention that the facilitation center in Umling area the work is under process. We are working towards ensuring that we make it functional at the earliest. And we'll ensure that all the tourists coming in, whatever support required, including, we have already mentioned this, there will be a food court also there. But along with the food court, there will be a facilitation center for our tourists. And there will be a similar thing which we will do in the Ratachera border side also, where a facilitation center is proposed. And we are going to move on that line also. And at the same time, sir, even in different parts of the state, the same process will be followed. For the Meghalaya Identification Registration of Migrant Workers Act 2020, so the rules have been finalized, and there were certain aspects of the rules which needed to be discussed after the amendment, and those discussions have taken place. And tomorrow in the cabinet, we will be passing those rules, and once those rules are passed, then we will be effectively able to implement all the provisions of this particular act. So the state border headquarters continues to issue regular alerts to the border districts, while local communities have been mobilized to promptly report instances of illegal entry to the authorities. So the next issue, the stop coke and cement plants. So the process of detection and demolition of illegal units is an ongoing activity being conducted by the Meghalaya State Pollution Control Board in conformity with all existing environmental laws. We are detecting coke plants operating without clearance and have abolished them. During phase 1 in July 2023, 44 plants were demolished, including 39 units in West Khasi Hills and 5 units in East Khasi Hills. During phase 2 in 2025, 28 demolitions were executed, including 17 units in West Khasi Hills and 11 units in East Jenti Hills. And hence, sir, we are taking prompt action, and as I said, we have demolished over 72 plants in the last 3 years. So 11 cement plants across East Jenti Hills have been inspected, sir. Their pollution control devices are linked to online monitoring. And the setting up of cement plants is strictly regulated through various rigorous environmental clearances under Environment Protection Act and through public hearing, etc. Sir, as mentioned by the mover of this particular short discussion, that the industries must comply. And that is again the principle that we also follow. And therefore, in every aspect, to ensure that we balance between development, economic development, and environment and ecology, laws are in place. And those laws must be complied to. And those who do not follow those laws and do not comply to it, action again is taken as per the provisions in the Act itself. And as I said, this government has never shied away. We have demolished 72 illegal coke plants in the last 3 years. And the message is quite clear and strong that anybody who will not follow the procedures, action will be taken against them as per law. So the establishment and operation of coke and cement plants are not permitted without obtaining the requisite statutory permissions, including consent to establish and consent to operate from the board, wherever applicable, along with other approvals required under prevailing environmental laws. In view of the above, sir, the government remains committed, as I mentioned, to ensuring that all industrial activities are carried out in compliance with environmental laws and statutory requirements. Regulatory inspections, regular inspections, continuous monitoring, and strict enforcement actions against violations will continue to protect environmental quality and public health in the state. Detect and deport illegal immigrants. So the state government has already put in place systems to tackle concerns regarding illegal immigration. Under the Meghalaya Resident Safety and Security Act 2016, Verification is underway, and 817 localities and 427 sub-localities in East Khasi Hills stand registered to date. The Anti-Infiltration Directorate is the nodal agency in the state for the detection and deportation of illegal immigrants, and the procedure is followed as per the directives of the Ministry of Home Affairs. From 2021 till date, 736 foreign nationals staying illegally in the state have been detected and prosecuted, and 262 have been deported after completing their sentence and obtaining travel permits from their respective missions. These figures reflect the firm commitment to uphold the rule of law and safeguard the state's security and demographic integrity. In view of the measures already in place, the government remains committed to ensuring that detection, verification, and deportation of illegal immigrants are carried out in accordance with the law and established procedures. Continuous monitoring, interagency coordination, and regular enforcement actions will continue to strengthen border management and maintain public order in the state. Lift the ban on coal mining.